right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for jumping on to our webinar today. Welcome. My name is Louis Memolo. I'm one of the partners at Weiner Benefits Group, along with Mike Reckner. And we have several of our team on the call here, along with Chris Counihan from the Department of Labor. But for those of you, just real quick, that aren't familiar with Weiner Benefits Group, we've been around since 1938. Our mission is to help you achieve a sense of financial security and peace of mind for you and your employees as we provide services and innovative solutions to meet the needs of your organizations in a unique and growing way. And on the next slide, our entire program works from hire to retire, providing innovative solutions. So your employee benefits, health and welfare, your qualified and non-qualified retirement plans, and then all the individual needs your folks may have. We are poised to assist you from hire to retire to give peace of mind and financial security. We have our QR code here you can scan to get to our website. And then the core of who we are and what we do is our team, and our team is dedicated to serve you. We have several of our teammates on the call here today. Allison Michael, our account manager, and James Barker, our account manager for benefits, Stephanie, our account executive for retirement plans, and the rest of our dedicated team are on the call as well, too. We're here to serve you, so feel free to touch base with us. But moving on to the subject of the moment, the Delaware Paid Family and Medical Leave Program, enacted on May 10th, 2022, as most of you know, and it's going into full effect on January 1, 2026. And as you know, it requires Delaware employers with at least 10 workers to provide paid job protected family and medical leave. And employer-employee contributions begin in January. And of course, Chris will expand on all of this, but you can choose to participate in the state program or look at self-funded or fully insured private options. Your employees qualify after 1,250 hours of work and 12 months as an employee. The benefit is roughly 80%, up to $900 a week, and it's broken down into three components: PML, PPL, and PFL. But rest assured, our team, the WBG team, we're here to help you navigate through all of this. We're providing consultation and analysis as to the best path forward for you and your group and your employees on a one-on-one basis. So feel free to schedule that time with us. And I don't want to over-obligate Chris, but he's been willing to get on some of those calls with our clients too, so you can get specific. But without further ado, I want to give Chris Counihan, Director of the Division of Paid Leave at the Department of Labor, is here with us to provide some information and answer questions. Now, along the way, you can feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. We have James and Stephanie and Allison monitoring that, and Chris will pause periodically when we see a number of questions that we want you to answer. So at this point, we can switch our slide deck over to Chris. And Chris, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it.
No problem. That's what I'm here for. So I was hired just about, actually, I think today is my 2-year anniversary, yay me. And the program, I was the first person hired to work with this family medical leave, the paid family medical leave insurance program here in Delaware. We just hired our 9th person, so we're growing and trying to serve you all better. Right now, my office is working towards a key date we're going to talk about in a little bit, but in 8 days from now, actually 8 days from now is a Sunday. So I've been telling everybody September 1st, but it's a Sunday during Labor Day weekend, and it's Labor Day. You know, we're the Department of Labor. So we're actually going to launch it, I believe, on September 3rd, because it would be horrible to make employees come in on that important weekend for Department of Labor. So on September 3rd, on Tuesday, when we're all back from work from a long weekend, that's when we're going to be opening up our program, and that is sort of the heart of what we're going to be talking about today. But what I wanted to start with was a little bit of history, because the paid family medical leave program is really just an insurance program built around the rules in as much as possible, built around the rules of the FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, which has been around for over 30 years now. And it's something that if you have 50 or more employees, it's something that you're actually quite comfortable with. It's been around for a while. There's plenty of information about how to administer it, how to run it out there on the web. And it's always been something that the individual employers have, with help of their TPAs and their consultants, have managed on their own. It's not a insurance program where some outside body, some government agency is deciding things. So it's odd for an insurance company, an insurance program. But what we tried to do is we tried to stick to that basic framework of FMLA, that the employer is at the heart of administering the program. And the division that we have here in Department of Labor, the Division of Paid Leave, is fully designed to support the employer, give them the tools, the systems, build into those systems all of the rules in as much as possible to help guide the employer, so that while you may are making the first swipe at a decision, ultimately, when it comes to if there's appeals and moving forward, it's the department that takes over in terms of who has the sort of, I hate to use the term liability, but who is responsible for the decision in the eyes of the courts going forward is the department. It's just that the employer gets to do that initial decisions. And what the Division of Paid Leave is really here for is to facilitate those decisions and to sort of on the back end act as a audit, as a check, as a referee to help employers. So as I said, since 1993, FMLA has been around. And it provides job protected leave for a variety of reasons for employees, but it's been unpaid. And originally, 30 years ago, 2/3 of households had the financial ability to handle continuing payments for emergencies, family emergencies, the kind of things that FMLA allows you to take leave for. But over time, and especially since the pandemic, savings for families have become depleted. Now, 2/3 of households are living paycheck to paycheck. So many of them don't have any kind of emergency savings to help them with an extended leave for a family medical reason. And that's where paid family medical leave is increasing around the country. There's a long history for paid family medical leave. It didn't always used to be called family medical leave. It used to be called temporary disability insurance. New Jersey, where I'm from, I didn't even realize it when I was growing up there, starting my career there. But New Jersey has had temporary disability insurance, which is very much against like paid family medical leave, since the late 40s. Rhode Island was soon followed right behind them. But it wasn't until about 20 years ago that California came along and created the first paid family medical leave insurance program to basically create that insurance program around FMLA and really define it as being focused in on those areas. Now, it was May of 22, just a few months before I got hired, that FMLA was signed into law for Delaware. And while FMLA starts at 50 or more employees, in the state of Delaware, our program starts at 10 or more employees. And as of this point, when we signed it, we were the 11th state. Today, 14 jurisdictions. I'd like to say state, but District of Columbia is included in there. And nearby us, New Jersey, New York, Maryland, District of Columbia, they all have degrees and their own version of paid family medical leave. Pennsylvania does not have paid family medical leave. And so when you're looking to attract and retain the best employees, it gives us a leg up against those states that do not have a paid family medical leave program. And it puts us on par with our neighboring states who we're competing for employees in the same labor pool with. It gives us at least an equal basis to competing for them. Each state is doing their own plan. There is no federal rules about this whatsoever. Department of Labor has not put out any sort of guidance for how to kind of mediate between states. And the IRS is planning in October or November to issue their first set of regulations or guidelines about the federal tax treatment. But as of right now, there are no federal rules out there guiding how we interact with the other states. Next slide, please. So the first thing is that paid family medical leave isn't really just one thing. It's a bundle of things. It's really 4 different types of coverage. And so we talk about types of coverage, and there's 4 of them. But if you look at the big box there, we also combine 2 together. And we talk about lines of coverage, there's only the 3. And family caregiver and qualified exigency kind of travel together. We'll get to that in a second. But parental leave is something that most of you are familiar with. In ye old-fashioned days, we used to call it maternity leave. But now it's provided regardless of sex, gender, or marital status. This is really focused in on bonding with a healthy child. It's there for birth, adoptions, or fostering, and it's in the first year of life of the new child. And it is up to 12 weeks in a year is what the employee can take off. And medical leave is sort of the other ones that we're kind of used to hearing about. But when we talk about medical leave, we tend to talk about this generally as short-term disability. And short-term disability still has an important role to play in your employee benefit portfolio. Because medical leave is for the employee when they are seriously ill or injured. But they can only use 6 weeks of leave every 2 years. So it's a very limited benefit for as compared to short-term disability. And short-term disability goes out much further into time and merges into or blends into long-term disability. So there's really going to be an interplay between our medical leave, any group short-term disability plan that you have, and then a group long-term disability plan further out if there really is an extended need for it. And then family caregiver leave is a new concept. There has been no insurance policy in the state of Delaware sold for family caregiver leave, but it's something that many employers have been paying out of pocket. And that's when an employee has a family member, a close family member, either a spouse, a child, or a parent. And having parents as the focus of an employee benefit is very rare indeed. But this is something that is increasingly common as we're dealing with the sandwich generation, taking care of both of our dependent children and our parents as they age. And what we can get there as an employee is if your patient, the family member, has a doctor certified serious health condition, illness, or injury. And we're talking about serious here. We're not talking about Jimmy has the sniffles. We're talking about either in the hospital, going into the hospital, or just coming out of the hospital, or the kind of chronic condition that is always present and always a burden to the person. And if you are in that situation as an employee, you get to take up to 6 weeks in 2 years to take care of that family member. Qualified exigency is an odd word, as an odd term. It doesn't kind of spring to mind what it is, but QE, qualified exigency, is the terminology that's in FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. We often use FMLA terminology simply to keep things square between ourselves and FMLA, especially if you're an employer who has 50 or more employees. We want to make sure the terminology lines up, that all the rationales and the reasoning lines up. So qualified exigency is for the employee who stays behind when a loved one, a close family member, goes off on overseas military deployment. And so they get another 6 weeks for up to 2 years during a period of 2 years to deal with those basically home front issues while their loved one is away on overseas duty. Now, it sounds like 12 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 weeks. It sounds like they can get up to 30 weeks off. But there is another rule, a combined maximum, where whatever type of leave you're taking, you cannot take more than 12 weeks in any 12-month period. So in reality, what that ends up meaning is, especially in things like parental leave, what the other states, the other 13 states that are out there, especially California, that's been around for a while, what they tend to see is that employees do a little risk adjudicate, they kind of juggle the risks. They won't take the full 12 weeks for parental leave. Rather, they'll take 6 to 8 weeks for parental leave and make sure they leave a little bit in their back pocket in case they get sick or a loved one gets sick. So they tend to actually not use the full amount of time that is available to them because of this 12-week in any 12-month period for all types of leave. Next slide, please.
Hey, Chris.
Chris,
Go ahead, Stephanie.
oh, that's okay. Sorry. Chris, we do have 2 questions, 3 questions now. I want to keep up with those. Do you mind if we take a moment to
Yeah,
address
sure.
those before we go on to the next topic?
Now, some of these things I might just say it's on the next slide.
Okay, I think that's
Okay,
perfectly
and then we
fine.
just
I
move to the
appreciate
next one.
that. Okay, I'm going to start with number 1. This program could impact small business, particularly when the hiring pool in Delaware decreases. How long are businesses required to hold a key job in the business? Thoughts on this, please?
So yes, so our program, so if you are FMLA, if you have to comply with FMLA, FMLA has its own rules about how long you have to keep the job open and available for that employee to come back. And theirs is basically 12 weeks. And again, that's for employers who have 50 or more. This question is about smaller employers, so I'm assuming less than 50. For us, you need to keep the job open and available for the person to return to for the length of their approved leave. So if they've been approved for 6 weeks of leave, you have to leave it open for 6 weeks for a medical issue. If they're approved for up to 12 weeks for parental leave, then you have to leave the position open for 12 weeks so that they have something to return to. And now it doesn't have to be, this is more explained, more fully fleshed out in our regulations. If you're ever really, really bored one night, you can't fall asleep, you can read our regulations. They're available online. But basically, it could be an equivalent position. It doesn't have to be that specific job. It has to be an equivalent position. Again, we follow FMLA rules as much as possible. So if you want sort of like a better explanation, either these fine people at Weiner benefit groups can help you with, or TikTok. I mean, it's been out so long, there's TikToks about this stuff. And if you're willing to sit down to a boring TikTok, they'll be able to answer that question in much more specificity.
Thank you, Chris. I have another one here. What is the definition of 10 employees? Full-time, part-time, etc.?
Yeah, I'll get to that one because that's actually a very important consideration, and there's a slide about that. And if there isn't a slide about that, I'll make sure I discuss it at greater length.
Okay.
So I'll get to that.
There's another part to that, and you may say this is also in that slide, but let me just throw it out there. If you have 10 employees and drop down to 8, what happens?
Right. So I'll definitely let you know. That's stay tuned for that one because if that's not a slide, I'll definitely make sure I hit that. But that kind of makes sense to talk about after the employee count. So next slide. Oh no, I'm already here. So
I have 2 more. Sorry, 2 more. I apologize.
Just going to keep on coming. So you go ahead.
What is the measurement period that the state is using? I think most employers are using a rolling backwards calendar.
Right. So this is this FMLA thing.
Okay.
Again, we use FMLA as often as possible. I talk about 12 months. Really what we're talking about is this concept called the application period. And application period is an FMLA term that defines 12 months. You'd think that 12 months just has one definition. 12 months is 12 months, but there's actually 4 acceptable definitions to what constitutes a 12-month period according to FMLA. Now, if you already do FMLA, if you have 50 or more employees, I would suggest that for consistency with your FMLA program, you use the same application period. No matter what application period you use, our computer system, which we're going to sharing with you as our online administrative system, it's called Delaware Labor First, will manage and track those time frames for you. It'll make sure when we get to the time when claims start in 1/1/26, it makes sure that you pay no claim before it's time, as we used to say at AIJ, and that we pay them accurately and on time, because the important thing is making sure that the proper amount is paid so that our fund is stable and that rates don't have to increase for any other reason than an unanticipated change in the environment. So what we're talking about here is the 4 different options. Again, if you use one of those 4 options, please continue to use those 4 options. However, if you have less than 50 employees and you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, when it says what application period do you want to use, it's going to default, like the drop down box that has 4 options is going to default to calendar year. Just use calendar year. It's so much easier. It just, it makes things easier to explain to the employees. It's more consistent with the way other employee benefits are handled. And it's the way most people just tend to think. And also, we're going to be on a renewal cycle that is a 1/1, January 1 cycle. So it also works and coincides with what we would call policy period, in case you want to go out there and self-insure or get a group insurance program. Again, you can use whatever you want. The issue about the looking back 12 months, rolling backwards 12-month period, is that it avoids this thing called stacking. However, the thing that really avoids stacking in our program is that it's a 6 weeks in 24-month period. So you can't stack when you're looking at different 24-month periods. Or you can, but it's going to be much, much, much more difficult. So that's we can talk more about that if you'd like. But next question, if you had.
Sure. How soon does a person qualify for this from their first date of employment?
All right, I'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay, and then small business may only have one of that position that will be out for 2 weeks.
Which would be true.
Sorry,
if
12 weeks, my apologies.
Couldn't go into the office. We just make sure that they get paid during that time period.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we're covering for is usually stuff that most employers, not every employer, but most employers are usually handling off the books without an official program and tending to pay the salary out of their pocket. The thing about this program is as this slide says, it's an income replacement program. So while the employee is on approved leave, you can take them off payroll. And basically our benefit check will be their paycheck during the time that they're on leave. So it allows you to take that money that you're not saving any money because there's the contributions going in place, and contributions over the long term, contributions should offset claims, but it'll do something with your cash flow to allow you to free up some cash flow so that you can hire a temp. So that you have the ability to continue ongoing operations, in as much as a temp is able to fill in for a person who's your regular trained employee as much as they can. But let me just get to this, because I think we're going to have to kind of frame up some of the program first.
Got it.
So if an application for leave is approved for one of those 4 reasons in the previous slide, the program will pay 80% of the employee's average annual weekly wages, up to $900 per week. What that means is there's sort of a cutoff period around $58,500, where if you get paid $58,000 or less, you're basically going to get 80% of your wages in terms of your benefit. If you make more than $58,000, you're going to pretty much get $900 a week, and that's sort of an easy way to kind of keep track of what you're doing. Over time, not initially, but in like a couple of years from now, that $900 is going to start going up with inflation. It's the federally measured regional inflation for the Philadelphia, Wilmington, Camden area. If you're ever bored, you can look that up. And most importantly, whether we're talking about benefits or contribution rates, this is a state program. There are no federal guidelines here. So the state of Delaware cannot tax wages earned. Well, we don't tax, we do contributions. We cannot require mandatory contributions, rose by any other name, unless it's in the state of Delaware. So PA wages are not subject to contributions. They are also not the basis for the maximum benefit. So when you're calculating the weekly benefit, it is your in-state wages as well as calculating contributions, your in-state wages. So it's in-state and it's FICA. Our rules, our law says it's FICA, and that's the law that governs Social Security. And what that means is which components of income are to be included in that wage base, both for benefits and for contributions. And FICA, really the important thing you need to know is that it includes not just their hourly or their annual salary, but also commissions, bonuses, tips. So most of the things that are considered wages are included in FICA. It also means that the employee is limited to the FICA maximum, $168,600 is the 2024 max. Next year, it'll be a little higher. The year after that, it's a little bit higher. But just like Social Security, when you reach that level, you don't have to pay into the system anymore. But the $900 max is for the benefits. And next slide, please.
Chris, we have 3 questions real quick.
Yeah.
So one says, can we remove the employees from benefits? If we can't remove them from the benefits, who pays for the employees portion?
Yeah, I was going to get to that right here.
Okay, great. Next question, are we able to supplement employee funds or funds that are paid to the employee with 900 a week?
Yes, that's actually a very important question.
Yeah.
So our insurance program, to keep rates as low as possible to everybody who's mandated to be in it, has these minimum level of benefits that are required by law. That's the 80% up to $900. For many high wage earners, that ain't going to cut it. It's better than unemployment insurance, but it certainly isn't going to pay all the bills. It was always meant to sort of protect the lowest wage earners to make sure that their emergency needs are well taking place. And so it's more of a social welfare program, but it applies to everybody who earns a wage. And the goal here is that, or the allowance here is that if an employer wishes to provide additional benefits on top of the mandatorily required benefits, there's 3 ways you can do that. Number one, you can find a group insurance policy that covers whatever you want them to cover. Of course, the group insurance company is going to set those rates for whatever they think the risk for that group is. And 2, you can self-insure. Under self-insurance, if you can meet or exceed the minimum requirements, that's up to you, but you take on all the risk. You don't pay any premium. However, you'll have to expect at least 6 claims per 100 employees per year. And there's the legal and administrative hassle of needing to do so in compliance and managing that process. And of course, you can always hire a TPA to do that for you, or a benefit consultant to do that for you. But there's additional costs in that, because ain't nothing easy and ain't nothing free. So what we're offering is a third option, which is continue to stay in the basic plan, our public plan, to provide sort of a basic level of coverage, that 80% up to 900, and then provide on a self-insured basis a top-up plan in which we'll write that first layer of checks, which for most of the people we're talking about would just be the $900 check, and then you provide additional amount. You can either do 85%, 90, whatever you want, all the way up to making that employee whole while they're out on approved leave. And in that top up period to make them whole or as rich of a benefit as you wish, you can use our computer system, Delaware Labor First, for free to administer those benefits. All you need to do is give us the plan design. Do you want to do it at 85, 90, 95, or 100%? Any kind of weekly maximum, whatever you want the benefit to be, you can enter it into our system, and our system will adjudicate that claim for you. What we won't do is pay the claim for that additional top-up amount. That will basically tell you how much of a check to write and for how long. And that's sort of how we call that in the business, that's the administrative services only. So we'll provide free administrative service only services, which is a strange way to put it, but administrative services only services for top-up plans if they're part of the program for our basic plan. In addition, if you're self-insured, you can also use our computer program to administer through an ASO service arrangement your plan. And again, that's totally free. We just want to make sure that it's a compliant system. Anything else?
Yep, we have three more. One is, what about businesses that have remote employees that are located out of state?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What about businesses that have remote employees that are located out of state?
Right. So you do not, okay, so employees who work with so the Act says primarily. The Act says that all employees who work primarily in the state of Delaware have to participate in this program. Did not define what primarily meant. So first part of that question is who's a Delaware employee, and what the program has decided through regulation is that 60%. If you work 60% of your time or more, it primarily sounded like more than the majority of your time. So we put it at 60. Why? I don't know. Sounds like a good number. So 60% or more of your time per quarter, and we'll measure that in the wages that you provide. Then you're required to be part of our program. If they work less than 60% of their time in this great state of Delaware, for instance, if they work from home, and for instance, if they work from home and their home is in PA, and they work 2 days out of a 5-day work week, that's 40%, which means they're a Delaware employee. If they work 3 days from home out of a 5-day work week, that's a larger percent, and therefore they aren't required to be part of the plan. However, if both the employee and the employer wishes, if that work from home employee feels like, and the employer feels like they're part of the Delaware team, they work by phone all the time, they're in constant contact. If they want to extend them the benefits, they can be reclassified in as a Delaware employee for the purposes of this program only. And it really becomes a voluntary agreement between an employer and employee to join a program that otherwise they would not have to join. And then contributions become an even weirder things because they've never been taxes because they use the term contributions. But now it's more of a voluntary choice by the employee to be included in the plan. So it's going to act more like premium. Again, we don't even use the term like premium. So that's one of the reasons why the IRS has been sort of reluctant to provide guidance on these types of programs. But yes, if you want your non-Delaware employees to join the plan, if they have a tie to Delaware, you can't just take your office in South Carolina and put them all on our plan if they're never related to this Delaware, to the state of Delaware. But if they're part of the Delaware team and they're temporarily outside from work from home or a temporary assignment, then they can be reclassified. And if you wish, you could also declassify them so that you can take them off of the plan. And that's all of those forms are available on Delaware Online. Sorry, not Delaware Online. That's our newspaper on Delaware Labor First. And everything is designed to be paperless. So you as the employer start the process, you email the form to your employee, they electronically sign it, it's automatically emailed back to Delaware Labor First, and all the databases are updated with the new information, either adding if they're on waivers, we'll get to that, or removing them if they're on waivers, or adding them if they're reclassified. So that's the long answer to what should be a short answer, but ain't nothing easy.
Thank you, thank you. Is there a minimum age to participate in the program? So for an employee, is there a minimum age requirement?
So the minimum age to work in the state of Delaware is 14. So this program can go as low as 14, but they probably will not be working the 1250 hours. Not many 14-year-old full-time employee or 25-hour-a-week employees. And if they could qualify for waivers. And that's something that we'll get to in a little bit.
Is the withholding a pre or post-tax deduction?
It's a really good question. Next question.
Okay,
Again, because the IRS has never given any guidance.
gotcha.
Ask the official question. I've been told by other states' plan administrators, ask your tax preparer.
The company has a hybrid work environment and the 60% is not tracked. Should we assess as a Delaware employee if they are taxed as if they work in a Delaware office? Sometimes with the hybrid work environment being very flexible, some days it could be 2 to 3 days, some days it could be 1 to 2, or some weeks, I'm sorry.
Right. So let me answer this by not answering this. Everything in this program is self-reported. You know where your employees are. We do not. So if you tell us they're Delaware-based, they're Delaware-based. If you tell us that they're working from home 3 days a week from PA and you need to reclassify them, then that's what they are. If for some reason there's a complaint, then we have to investigate. We might do a spot audit, but again, with 9 employees, that's going to be difficult in the very beginning. We will do more of those as time goes on, but just like every other self-reported thing, our information is based, our knowledge is limited by the information you give us. So report it.
For a company that is 10 to 25 employees who are only required to offer parental leave, can an employee or employer opt out of the plan?
No, this is all mandated. At some point in the future, somebody may do an amendment to the act to allow such a thing. But right now, with the idea of getting as large of a contribution base for the risk base to reduce the contribution rates as much as possible to ease the burden on all employers, it was decided that no matter what age you are, and also I would not be the one who say what that certain age is where they cannot have kids anymore. Because I don't know if you've heard about some of these, I don't know, who's it? Robert De Niro just had a baby. He's like 80 something. So there ain't no maximum age anymore. But also fostering. If you think about how many grandparents have kids who those kids aren't able to take care of their own children. And I know many people my age and older who have basically become foster parents to their grandchildren. And so that's the sort of the parental leave doesn't really end at the end of natural childbirth. Let me get a little bit into the funding, because I think that's kind of an important thing here. It's important to note that this is like premium. This is like an insurance plan, premiums in, claims out. The premiums coming in, we don't call them premiums, we don't call them tax, we call them contributions. So the contribution is less than 1% of eligible employees' salaries. Really, it's if you take all of the benefits, if you're giving all the benefits, it's 0.8% of wages. And again, it's just the FICA wages, and it's just the FICA wages in state. I think at this point, it's very, very important to point out that if you use a payroll service company to basically do this process for you, not just paid family medical leave, but all of your paychecks, deductions, we have been working with them for the last couple of months to fully integrate them electronically into our system. They are going to execute much of this behind the scenes for you. So the ADPs of the world, the Paychecks of the world, anybody who has a payroll provider, also Intuit is doing it. Oracle is working on programs for us to basically build this stuff into your payroll, automated payroll system that they're taking care of for you. They're doing this automatically behind the scenes, and we're working with them on that. Check with your payroll provider, service provider, to make sure that they're in the loop on that. So it's 0.8% of wages if you're doing all of them. An important thing is if there's employers can require their employees to contribute up to half of that amount. And that half has to be taken as a payroll deduction. And just like almost all payroll deductions, if the amount is not taken and the contribution amount is not taken through a payroll deduction in which it was earned, the employer is responsible for it. You cannot go back in future. You cannot go to future payrolls and ask for back due contributions from the employee. It is 100% the employer's responsibility for the full amount of the contributions. If you're doing this by again line of coverage, and you only have to do parental leave as an employee, so if you have between 10 and 24 employees, that means you only have to pay 0.32%. Again, not 0.3%, but 0.32%. And this is, you only pay for what you need. Next slide, please. So there's an important split here, and this gets to waivers. And this is an important thing for all employers to understand. So there's a difference between the employees who are program eligible and those who are benefit eligible. For program eligibility, you only need to meet those three things there, only one of which goes to the employee themselves. So as I mentioned, the employee has to be Delaware based. They have to work primarily in the state of Delaware. You can do the reclassification thing. We can talk about that in a bit too. But it starts out by you only start counting the employees working in the state of Delaware. Then if you have less than 10 employees, you're not an eligible employer. Also, if you're a federal agency, and it's federalism, the state is told by the feds what to do. The state can't tell the feds what to do. So the feds have their own program. They aren't subject to this program. And the other part, the only other type of employer that's excluded from the law is seasonal employers. And by a seasonal employer, it has to be an employer who basically closes their business for 30 days in a row or more. Nobody actually closes their business. Funland, for instance, down at the shore, they have people who work year round, maintaining the equipment, doing the files, paying bills, all that stuff. But if you're not doing commerce, then you're closed in terms of the seasonal employers. So if you're a seasonal employer, it's not that you only pay for or do these contributions during the time that you're open. No, you aren't subject to it at all. So if you're Funland and you're closed for when it's not beach season, you're not part of this program at all. Unlike most employer mandates that really only cover, honestly, for-profit employers, this covers just about everybody. Whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a religious organization, if you're a faith-based organization, you're all included in this mandate. All government entities, so both the state government, county government, municipal governments, city governments, all of them are included in this mandate. It really covers just about everybody. So program eligibility is very, very broad, and you're program eligible from the day you start your employment, which goes to the question that was asked previously. So as soon as you are hired, you're program eligible. However, you cannot put in for a claim until you've worked for at least 12 months with your employer. And even after that first year of ineligibility, if you're 5 years with that employer, but you work less than 1,250 hours a week, again, why 12 months, why 1,250? Both of those numbers are in FMLA, and we try to keep consistent with FMLA as much as possible. So in the last 12 months, if the employee has worked less than 25 hours a week, which is basically 1,250 hours a year, they are not eligible for the program to put in for a claim. So it creates this dichotomy. employees who are program eligible but are benefit ineligible. Now, some people, it's just a temporary thing. You start working, you can't get your benefits for the first 12 months, but after that, you're a full-time employee. You'll get covered soon. That means you just have to pay into the system for 12 months. It reduces everybody else's costs. It adds, it makes it easier to administer for the employees, for the employer, hopefully. But if you're hired as a temporary employee, or if you're only hired to work a couple of shifts a week, that means that you'll never reach benefit eligibility. And if you're in a situation as an employee, for instance, my daughter this summer worked at Sweet Nels on 202, scooping ice cream. She was only doing it, actually yesterday was her last day. She was only doing it for the summer because she's starting at Rowan in a couple of weeks. Oh my God, my baby's going to college. Anyway, so she was never going to get to 12 months. And she only worked a couple of shifts. So she was never going to get to 25 hours a week, or even if she did 25 hours a week in the 3 months she was there, she was never going to get to 1250 hours. So in those kinds of situations, which is something that is known by the employee and the employer, sort of as the terms of the conditions of your employment. If your terms of your employment are such that you're short-term or very part-time, then you're eligible for a waiver, which means if both of you sign it and submit it back to us, and again, it's all paperless, it's all electronic, it's done by email. But if you sign a waiver, you don't have to pay contributions for that employee, and that employee will never get a benefit until you sign a removal of waivers, or until the person does start working for you for more than the allotted amount of time, in which case they're instantly benefit eligible. But if you want, you can revoke that waiver and put them back into the program, and you just have to owe the back premium. If you can go forward, please.
Can I stop you for 1 second again for some questions? We have.
Yeah, I think we're actually like almost done with the
Slide
deck.
Okay.
So just to let you guys know, and I think this is pretty much the end of it, employers are going to be doing the, hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. Employees do the claims application process online. Again, this is not until 1/1/26, but they'll go online, they'll enter in their social security number or their ITIN, their tax number, and they'll find out which employer has been listing them on their census of active enrolled employees. And they'll basically fill out the application for a claim online. The most important part of that claim application is the email contact information for their healthcare provider. And their healthcare provider will be given a claims form also online for them to fill out. It's just 3 questions, and it's based off of FMLA. So they're used to be doing this for the last 30 years. That just asks them if they have a serious health condition as defined by FMLA, and they know what that means. They've been doing it for 30 years. And if they say yes, then neither the state nor the employer really is in a position, because those doctors are putting their professional license online at risk. So they're going to be very careful, hopefully, and if not, if they over certify, we're going to go after them for committing fraud. And we're going to basically not challenge their diagnosis unless there's one doctor who's over certifying, and therefore we're going to investigate their practice. So the doctor is going to decide whether or not the person has a serious health condition, and they're going to say how long that serious health condition warrants them for being out. Same thing if they're the family caregiver, how long the sick patient's condition requires them to stay home to be taken care of. And again, no more than 6 weeks, but it could be less than 6 weeks depending upon the condition and the doctor's certification. basically all that is handled electronically. The application is written online, so there's no handwriting to kind of interpret, and it has to be completely filled out before it's submitted. No partially submitted forms. So it should make in administering this very, very simple compared to other programs that are paper-based. And as you get the information in from the doctor, you'll also have all their information about how many hours they've worked and how many months they've worked. So therefore, whether or not they're benefit eligible. And the system will basically tell you as the employer, if we were in your position, we would pay this claim, or if we were in your position, we would not pay this claim. The reason why the final decision is up to you is so you can coordinate, especially if you have FMLA, with the FMLA decision, mostly it'll help you decide FMLA. And it will also, you have more recent information. Our information on our system is provided on a quarterly basis for the previous quarter. So it might be 15 weeks old. So we know if they worked for you 15 weeks ago or at the end of last quarter, you'll know whether or not they worked for you at the time the claim is made. So you have more of the final say because you have more information. And again, Delaware Labor First will help you with that. Is there another slide? Last thing I wanted to hit here before we just finish up with questions is September 1 is when the portal starts for allowing you guys to either, if you're too small to join, that 10 or less, you can join voluntarily. Or if you have between 10 and 24, you're only required to provide parental leave, but you may voluntarily add the additional lines of coverage if you wish. And you can do this through our portal starting in 8 days. Actually, it's not going to be 8 days. It's going to be September 3rd after the Labor Day weekend is over. But you do it that way. If you're a larger company and you want a private plan, which is either self-insurance or group insurance, you can also do it through our portal, again, starting September 1st. If you're doing a group insurance plan that's been approved by a Department of Insurance, it's a very simple process of notifying us and uploading the policy to us. If you want to self-insure, there's an application process, which is basically just checking to make sure you have the requirements met for the regulations and in the Act. That portal ends on 12/1. It'll reopen every year between September 1 and 12/1, sort of for an open enrollment period, if you want to move between plans, including if you want to move from one group insurance policy to another group insurance policy. Again, you just have to notify us so that our records are straight. Starting January 1, 2025, contributions start, which for you means that on 1/1/25, payroll deductions have to begin or can begin if you require your employees to pay up to half. We won't collect those contributions until 30 days after the end of the quarter. You recognize that time frame, that's what unemployment insurance is on their schedule. 30 days after the end of the quarter, that's when UI is submitted as well. We're going to also be open, that's the first due date is 4/30/2025. And eventually, not this year, but next year most likely, there's going to be a single report for hours and wages that's going to combine both the information needed for UI, unemployment insurance, and for paid family medical leave. And again, as I mentioned, on 1/1/26, that's when claims begin. And that's when employees can start submitting their claims applications. And I think that's the last one. Yep, that's the last one. So now I think is a good time to get into any questions you might have.
All right, we do have quite a few questions. I know we're up against the hour. For anyone that can't, stay on for the questions, I just want you to know this will be recorded and will be sent to you. But let's go here. We have a few in the Q&A. Do those employees working remotely 3 days or more out of state get counted in your employee count?
Right. So thank you very much. That wasn't one of the slides, but this is it's easy now that you know what they all are. So the employee count is a pretty simple math problem, addition and subtraction. You start with every active employee you have. It doesn't matter how many months you plan to have them work for you and how many hours you plan to have them work for you. Just put everybody in the pool to start with as an active employee. An active employee is not fired. So anybody who's actively on your payroll. So you start with everyone. You subtract out anyone you put on waivers. So anybody that has signs a waiver, both you and the employee must sign, and therefore it's your really short-termers, the people who are on like project work, big work, or just for a short season, or who work less than 25 hours a week. Those are the people you want to put onto waivers. And then you add in those rare employees who are reclassified, who live outside of Delaware, who work outside of Delaware most of the time, but you want to have them included in your Delaware plan just for the purposes of that they're part of your Delaware team. So the employee count starts out with all your employees, subtract out the waivers, add back in your employees on reclassification. And the question that was also asked, what happens as your employee count goes up and down? The Act sets out the rules, and our computer system is going to track it all for you to make it easier to keep the math right. But the rule of thumb is that all the benefits are very easy to gain for employees and very hard to lose. What that means is as soon as your employee count goes over 10, goes above 9 to be 10 or more, that's when, and then of course also above 25, that's when the new coverages are activated. What happens first is there's a 30-day periods for notice. You have 30 days to send them notice. So on the 5th week after you go over that, because we try to do everything by week because payrolls work by weeks, you then basically add in that new coverage 5 weeks after the employees gets added above that threshold number. Then if you fall below the threshold, just falling below for 1 day doesn't matter. It has to fall below and stay below for 12 straight months in order to lose a coverage. And after that 12th month, then you have 30 days to notify your employees. And if at the end of that 13-month period, they're still below the threshold number and have not risen above it in that 13-month period, then they lose the coverage. You can, of course, voluntarily decide to keep the coverage if you feel like you're going to be bouncing up and down. Sometimes it's just easier to avoid the do I have it or do I not by voluntarily providing the coverage over and above what's required by the threshold numbers. But that's, again, entirely up to the employer.
All right. Does the program pay for intermittent leave, medical leave?
Yes, intermittent, so leave in FMLA is provided in 3 ways. Continuous, which is pretty straightforward. You leave on this date, you come back on this date. Reduced schedule, which is when the doctor says, listen, this person can't work full time, but they can work part time. This is the schedule they can work. That, you know, they get paid for those hours. We pay for the additional leave to make them close to whole. And the last is intermittent leave, which is for you know, taking either themselves or a loved one, especially to doctor's visits and things like that. Now, one of the only differences between FMLA and paid family medical leave, well, first of all, is the difference is that it's paid. And because it's a paid benefit, there's a lot of administrative effort, and especially in the fraud, anti-fraud area, to make sure that that the benefit is proper. The benefit check is proper. So there is a minimum in FMLA that they can take up to as low as 1 single hour off in a day. For paid family medical leave, because of the baseline expense, we require them to take an entire day off in order to get a check. If you have 50 or more employees, they qualify for that hourly thing. But for us, it's an entire day off in order to get a benefit check. But yes, intermittence included.
Okay. If an employee files a claim and is paid from PFML, will they receive a W-2 from the state?
You will not receive a W-2. This is not salary. What it is a benefit, and they will receive a 1099
Ah,
the end of the year. It's either going to be a 1099-G or a 1099 miscellaneous. I don't know. The tax nerds are going to tell me which one. But starting in the first, in the proper time frame, right after January in 2027 is when we're going to send out those 1099s for claims that begin on 1/1/26.
great. Can you please provide us with a list of employer providers who have partnered?
I think she meant payroll providers. It's corrected down below.
Oh, yeah.
My
So
apologies.
no, that's fine. So the payroll providers, basically, we are working through an organization called the NPRC, but also with payroll.com, which is another organization. And it's a membership-based organization, and their members include many of the largest payrolls and most of the smaller and mid-sized as well. But in addition, we're posting that information on, so Delaware Paid Leave is our website. But for our computer program, Labor First, there is the Labor First webpage, which is part of our Department of Labor suite of web pages. And they're going to have the technical stuff. And that all the payroll, electronic and detailed information is available or going to be available on Labor First. So it's not just the NPRC and payroll.com that gets this information. It's going to be made public for every payroll provider and for large employers who kind of have their own in-house system.
Great, thank you. Can you only have employees contribute if you are subject to the 0.8%? Can you?
So if you, no, so if you're doing, so in other words, if you only have to provide the parental leave and so therefore the rate is only 0.32, no, it's half of whatever it is. And the way this act is set up, you're allowed to split up each line of coverage separately. It seems like a lot of administrative hassle, but if you wanted to, you could farm out your medical leave to a insurance carrier. You could, at the same time, do your parental leave self-insured, and you could do family caregiver leave through the public plan. You're legally allowed to do that. That's why there's 3 separate rate buckets, and that's why family caregiver and qualified exigency are shoved together, because there's no rate for qualified exigency. So we shoved it together for family caregiver in terms of how you could divvy up your coverages in terms of how they're provided. It seems like a lot of administrative effort. I would not recommend it, but if you want to, whatever floats your boat. And so you're able to do that. You're basically only have to pay for the lines of coverage that are in the public plan, and whatever line of coverage that you take in the public plan, you can charge up to half to your employer, to your employees.
Thank you. The Delaware employee starts paying right away upon hire, even though they are not eligible yet?
Yeah, the same thing happens with like group short-term disability and a lot of other programs. I paid into the state's medical program, even though I didn't get to file a claim for the first 90 days. It is an unfortunate, that's a requirement of FMLA, and it's an unfortunate requirement of many insurance policies that they do the same thing. These elimination periods or waiting periods, whatever they call them, for dental major claims, you have to do different waiting periods. A change in the act in the future by the General Assembly down in Dover might change that, but as of now, yes, that's the way it is.
Okay, thank you. An associate would be waived from submitting until, sorry, it looks like there was a typo here. And an associate would be waived from contributions until they are program eligible at their 1-year anniversary?
So if you hire them with the expectation they'll make it to their 1 year anniversary, and you hire them with the expectation that they are going to work 25 hours a week, then you should probably not put them on waivers, because all your employees are going to be part of your hour and wage report to the state. And as soon as an employee hits 1250 hours in a given year, even if they're on waivers, first we'll warn you, tell you you should take them off of waivers, therefore the removal of waiver process, in which case you only have to pay the back premium for that employee back to the date of their hire or 12 months ago. And if you don't do that, despite probably it'll probably end up being two warnings from us, then we'll basically forcibly remove them, require the additional premium, and there may be penalties and interest applied. So in other words, don't do it unless you have to. Don't put them on waivers unless they actually qualify.
Right. Thank you.
And just so you know, it's sort of the best practices, because there is back premium due for any employee that you hire that you might start as a part-time person and then hire as a full-time or change to a full-time later. That could happen with any of your employees. So what you might want to do is, again, this is up to you, but it would be sound financial practice to take some of that 0.8, if they're paying 0.8, and set it aside just in case you actually have to pay back premium on that person on waiver. I wouldn't do all of it, because you expect most of your part-timers to stay part-timers, or you expect some people to just not stick around for 12 months. So again, that's up to you. It's not required, but it will cushion the blow.
All right, thank you. Is my understanding correct that we should only collect employee contributions to PFML for eligible employees from eligible wages? How does this work for employees who have varied schedules and may drop in and out of the 1,250 hours after 1 year of employment? Also, for full-time eligibles, we should only collect employee contributions after 1 year of service. What happens if this occurs mid-pay period? Does it have to be broken down to the daily pay / contributions?
So for putting them on waivers past that 12-month mark, I would really only put somebody on waivers if they are if they're stay under 25 hours a week. It's the average for the most recent 12 months. So they might go up and down around 25 hours a week, but if they, and here's the reality, is 25 hours a week is a tough number, because if you work 3 shifts in retail, 3 times 8, the normal amount of time in a shift, is 24. So you just need 1 or 2 hours of overtime per week to qualify to go over that 25. I would, if somebody is 24, if somebody is averaging 24, you may not want to put them on waiver, just simply because it's too easy to go over waiver, to therefore to be taken off of waiver and owe penalties, and it just gets messy. So I would be conservative with that. And basically the rule is all employees submit contributions unless they're on waiver, and both of them have to sign it. So it's kind of a, how you actually handle that is sort of administratively, it would be up to you. But for us, we're really looking at the time of the claim, in that past 12 months, what was the average hours? Did they reach 1250? Projections is tough. But the one thing that's on your side is that we're not asking you to send in contributions based upon what you think your employees' hours and wages will be in the next quarter, but rather what they were in the past quarter. We're backwards looking on contributions payments. So you always already know what their hours and wages are. It's not a guess looking forward.
Awesome, thank you. Next question, for those employers going the self-insured route, would an employee still submit a claim through Delaware Labor First? And to add to that, Chris, I want to say, how do they self-certify that? I think that's a big question that we're getting.
Yeah, so if you are a self-insured, first of all, to be self-insured, you have to go between September of this year and December 1st of this year to apply for self-insured. You have to have more than 100 employees. You have to have a surety bond. You have to have a claims account. You don't need to pre-fund it now, but you need to acknowledge that you have to have one at the start of claims on 1/1/26. A couple other smaller requirements. You need to have plan documents. Plan documents are available on our website for you to start your process from. But really, it comes down to whether you want to administer the claims yourself, in which case you will be the one that they send the claim to. You will have to come up with your own claim form. You will have to figure out how to get the doctor to certify whether or not the person has a serious health care. You're on your own, and you're legally liable to do it right. Or you can sign up between September to use our process, our insurance program, for our online administrative system, Delaware Labor First, in order to do all that administrative stuff. To the employee, it feels like they're on the public plan, but really you're the one who writes the physical check and you don't send in any contributions. So you're free to do that. But it'll lessen your administrative effort if you sign up to have us do it, and it's for free. Or if you work with the TPA will be the one then who makes sure that it's done all administratively compliant.
Thank you. Does federal FML still have to be processed separately, or is the Delaware PFML automatically translate to an approved federal unpaid family medical
Yeah,
leave?
the feds pretend that this doesn't exist. The feds don't know, they don't care. There are no rules, according to the feds, about how to coordinate with paid family medical leave, not even for California, that's been around for 20 years. Not even with New Jersey, that's been around since the 1948. So this is a long time sort of, good luck with that laissez-faire kind of approach. So it's our understanding that employers will continue to handle their FMLA the way they have been doing it. The one thing I can tell you is that there's no FMLA required claim form for the doctor to certify that it's a serious health condition. And our form, because the FMLA program allows any form to be used, should, again, ask your attorney. I can't give you that kind of advice because I don't do FMLA, but our form should help you and should cross-qualify with the FMLA. So it should be a one-form process. And if we're doing it electronically, it will be much easier for you to get at least the doctor certification.
Thank
So one
you.
thing I did want to add here is that if you're a group over 50 and you're considering, especially an insurance program, you might want to keep in the back of your mind that while you are administering the FMLA, because the insurance company isn't going to do your FMLA, the insurance company is going to decide whether or not the claim is approved or denied. And so there's a very good chance that whatever FMLA decision you make, the insurance company might make a different decision. And in that case, an employee will notice the difference between the two, especially if one of those is a denial. Somebody's going to get sued for something. And if you stay with our program as an employer, you'll be making the decision both on FMLA and paid family medical leave, and you'll have more control over that decision, even though you're still working within the bounds of the rules of both programs. You'll be the one at least discussing it and talking it with your employees.
Thank you, Chris. Are officers or owners excluded from the employee count? Are they excluded from claims?
So all employees, to be an employee, you have to get a W-2. If you are a owner who does not draw a paycheck, then you don't have to do, you don't have to comply with this program. You're not included in the employee count. If you are a owner who says gets paid out of a percent of profits, you do some other IRS form, not a W-2, it's a K something, something. I don't know. These guys at Weiner probably know the answer to that better than I do. But
fun.
they're also not subject to paid family medical leave. However, if they want to, no, they're not subject. Let's just keep it not subject.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And let's see, how do you recover employee responsibility deductions for the FMLA paid claim periods?
I don't know. Not sure what you're asking there.
How do you recover employee responsible deductions for FMLA paid claim periods?
So FMLA doesn't have a payroll deduction, but paid family, while they're out on paid leave, they do not, nobody has to submit contributions on their behalf. If while they're not on approved leave, the contributions aren't able to be collected through the proper payroll period, then the employer is responsible for sending in the contribution. At the end of the day, we should only get one check. We should get one check from the employer. The relationship for payroll deductions is between the employee and the employer. The only reason why we might get involved is if it's done on a discriminatory manner, you know, with a protected class. But generally speaking, if you have your associates and your staff pay 50-50 and your partners get 100% employer paid and they contribute nothing, that is legal, because that is a legal means of splitting up employee classes. So that may not answer your question, but that's the best I got.
If that question needs to be dug into more detail, please reach out to us. We are, again, happy to do individual meetings with you, and of course Chris can support us if that's needed. Next question. Oh, I lost my spot here. All right, any lines of coverage require an elimination period, or is everything immediate onset?
For any lines of any type of coverage, they have to meet the requirement of 12 months and 1,250 hours in the most recent 12 months. Beyond that, as soon as the qualifying event occurs, they start getting paid.
So there's no like 7-10 day wait.
No, that's a short-term disability thing.
Right.
It's not a paid family medical leave thing because we're only really 6 weeks. If we had a, like many short-term disabilities have a 30-day elimination period, that would be almost our entire program.
Right. Great, thank you. If we go with a private plan, then decide to switch to the state plan, how long do we have to wait to get into the state plan?
So yeah, that switchover, as I said, sort of like an open enrollment period between 12/1, I'm sorry, between 9/1 and 12/1 of each and every year. And every new policy starts on 1/1. If you are a newly formed company in the middle of the year, of course, you can start in the middle of the year. If you go over or under a threshold number in the middle of the year, yes, that's sort of the exception to the rule. But if you're an existing company and you want to switch the way you provide it, either from a public plan to a private plan or vice versa, or between different types of private plans, then you do that on 1/1.
And Chris, a follow-up question on that. I answered offline. I just want the answer to be everyone to benefit from the answer. The question following that one was, if you choose the private option, you avoid making the contributions all throughout 2026, correct?
Yes, if you in this, so it's a this cycle only kind of thing for it's an introductory special. So during this introductory period, because you can't pay premiums without paying claims. That means if you get an insurance policy that starts on the start of claims, which is 1/1/26, then you don't pay any premium in 25 to your insurance company. And also, you've already been removed from the public plan, so you don't owe us contributions.
And the deadline for that is December.
That'll be December 1st. Yeah. And as long as you notify us by December 1st, it may take a couple of, for the insurance side of things, it's going to be pretty automatic. We're going to go and look. We're going to ask you to upload your policy. The reason why we have to check it is to make sure you didn't upload your grocery list instead of a policy, but it's pretty much, automatically approved. Just check that one thing. Now, with self-insured, there's a little bit of a process. So it might take a little bit longer to approve something if we get it on, like, a day before 12/1. We might need to take a few minutes just to double check everything, make sure everything's signed and ready to go. But we plan to have everything clearly approved or denied by 1/1/25.
Great, thanks. Sorry to interrupt you, Stephanie.
No problem.
That's okay. Can working W-2 owners complete waivers?
Oy. You mean because, well,
Working owners complete waivers.
that is tough because if you're an owner, so if you're an owner and you actually keep track of your hours and you submit it like to other things besides us, so you're submitting it to, I don't know, workers' comp, you're submitting it to Social Security and other entities besides us, then we'll take that as truth. Basically, the way that we are approaching all this stuff is, when it comes to self-reporting, is sort of the Ronald Reagan line of trust but verify. But the only time we're going to verify, we're going to do random audits. Again, we're a small group, but we're going to try to do some random audits and more as time goes on. But the only time we're really going to check is if there's a complaint. Just like most enforcement of most codes, it's a complaint-driven process. So if somebody says, hey, I realize my boss isn't paying into the system, if they're narking on you, we're legally required to check into it. How we're actually going to check that, I have no idea. So the short answer is, if you self-report a waiver, we will accept it. We trust that you're doing it correctly. We audit, we check on the back end with penalties and interests and yada yada in case there's issues.
Thank you. We are a Delaware corporation with 5 locations, one of which is in Maryland with Maryland employees. How do we handle those employees?
Maryland employees, again, this is a state-by-state thing. Elliot Scher is the plan administrator over there. Great guy, give him a call. They have their own organization. If you're working primarily in the state of Delaware, you go to us. If you work primarily in the state, well, actually, I don't know how Maryland eligibility works, so you have to ask them. But there may be an instance, and this is one of the things, so in unemployment insurance, because it is a federal program instituted and administered on the local state level, everyone follows what's called localization rules. Each state, each jurisdiction follows localization rules. So whichever the plurality of hours you do in a particular jurisdiction, that jurisdiction gets 100% of your unemployment insurance assessment, and that jurisdiction is responsible for 100% of your claims. That only works because all 50 states and additional jurisdictions do the same thing. And so state by state, it's a wash. In our program, there are no federal rules. It's the wild, wild west. We wish the federal government would create this kind of localization process. But right now there is none.
So if you have
So sometimes you might be part of the Maryland plan and the Delaware plan.
So if you're a Delaware corporation and you have employees that work in Delaware, but you have one that lives in Maryland and one that lives in PA, the Maryland one would be
So we don't care where you live,
Okay, so
where you physically do the work, unless you're
where you
working from
physically-
home.
okay, understood.
Yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, AstraZeneca, when it started up in what was it, the 90s here in North Wilmington, 80% of their employees were from out of state.
Right.
So we're Delaware. We deal with people living in other states all the time.
Yeah. All right, on to the next question.
But the rule of thumb should be whatever, if whatever percent state income tax you pay to Delaware from their wages, that should be the guide for how much should be paid in contributions to us in terms of this, what's in state versus out of state. We follow the same sort of delineation, in state, out of state, where that wage was earned as is used by Division of Revenue for state income taxes.
Okay. Thank you.
Which, you know, you should be doing.
Right.
But again, then of course it's also self-reported.
Yeah.
Which means do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law until it gets checked.
All right, we do have about 7 questions here that I want to try to get through if that's okay, Chris.
Sure.
Okay. Hospitality, variable hour. We just don't know how many hours they will work.
Right. That's why it's retrospective, not prospective. That's why we ask how many hours did they work?
When they submit the claim, one of the questions on there is how many hours did they work?
They don't need to, because every quarter you're going to be sending us the hour and wage census for your employees.
Okay.
So we'll already know. It'll already be in the system as part of your contributions and report.
But they don't need a waiver for that.
It's up to you guys.
Question has some
Nobody
parts
needs a waiver.
Okay.
But I mean, if I was a employer in the hospitality industry, I mean, I worked in restaurants all my life before I got like a real job. I used to make more money in the restaurant industry anyway. But they all know that the majority of their employees are only going to work a couple of weeks, a couple of months. If they make it a year, that's fantastic. So I am not suggesting this, but I would not know this. If you're an employer, well, I'm not going to say it, but you might want to use waivers judiciously in this, given your industry. Just keep in mind that if they go over that 1250 hours, we'll know it and will require you to pay back premium. So if you overuse waivers, make sure you save some money on your balance sheet to pay in case the employee owes, in case you owe back contributions on that employee.
So that's how you manage the idea that an employee could be paying into it, but not end up being eligible in the end, and vice versa.
Well, officially, no. That's not the official way to do it. That's more just, it's more those industry specific high turnover kind of things. I've worked in retail. I've worked in restaurants. They just don't work for very long. It's 20% of your employees that actually make it to the 1 year. And you just know your industry, man. But the whole idea of the 12-month waiting period is that if we started charging contributions on the 12th month, that means that the rates would go sky high. Because ultimately it's the same dollar amount that we need, because we base it on anticipated claims. And we divide it out over total hours of contributions.
All right, I don't know if that kind of helps
Probably not.
answer this next question, but let me just put it out there. What if an employee signs a waiver, became eligible later in the year unexpectedly, and they want to revoke their waiver?
Yeah, so revoking the waiver is a process between the employee and the employer to be removed from it, and that's done on like a prospective basis. So like I anticipate getting to 12 months, or I anticipate getting to 1250. If you remove it yourself before you hit those thresholds, then you only have to owe the back premium as the employer. If you go over those thresholds, if an employee goes over those thresholds, then the back premium is owed, plus there's going to be penalties. They're going to be automatically assessed and posted on your next contribution, basically bill, invoice.
All right.
So again, it's sort of like use them judiciously.
Are plan documents available now or not until 9/3?
No, plan documents are currently up and available on our website, which is de.gov/paid leave. Or you Google Delaware paid leave and we're the first thing that pops up.
All right.
It's in the resources sections under private plans.
All right. And I think that maybe Mike and Lewis might be able to answer part of this question. Can an employee double dip with PFML and short-term disability for qualifying events?
So
So-
what that is a coordination of benefits issue. And it's coordination of benefits and paid family medical leave, just like it is with every other employee benefits, is a huge pain in the butt. There's 6,000-ish employers that are required to provide this. And there's probably 6,000 ways that those employers are providing these short-term disabilities, paid time off, other kinds of overlapping benefits, income replacement benefits with paid family medical leave. It's going to be a lot of case-by-case stuff. Our Delaware Labor First is going to help guide you through that process. But it's also going to be based upon you understanding the benefits that you currently provide. But the way that we have it set it up with short-term disability is that short-term disability, when available, is a primary payer. So your STD pays first, and then our benefit is calculated afterwards. The one overarching requirement after we do the 80% up to $900 is that an employee cannot make from any source, all sources combined, of income replacement any more than 100% of what they previously made. So ain't nobody getting rich or richer off of being out on paid family medical leave.
Which has always been the case, as you know, with any disability program. But that is our role to help you help our clients and prospective clients be guided through that process in a way that you can find the overlap, find out where everything. And we have maybe a half a dozen or more major carriers that are willing to provide some numbers and analysis that we're meeting with our clients to review as well, so they can see, well, what's the best path and how is it going to impact? How does it overlap? You know, how do you meet those minimums and maximums and all of those great questions? So that's part of our role in this as your advisor.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the questions that I'm always asked is, why is it that the employer is the one making these claims decisions? And one of them is this coordination of benefits issue. You guys know your plans. You guys have your plans. There's 6,000 different ways. We're going to have to ask you anyway. We're going to have to ask you a bazillion different questions because we don't know. It's just easier to ask you, what's the other plan paying? And then you do the calculation with the help of your plan provider, and then write in that amount, and we'll deduct that from what, we'll add that into our calculations through Delaware Labor First.
All right, thank you. Can you add hours from multiple days of approved time off to total 1 day for payment?
Oh, in other words, those incremental things like an hour here and an hour there. Again, self-reported, I don't know. But this is the kind of thing that our system is going to ask you for. What day did you take off and the reason for taking it off?
Okay. In addition to deductions, if someone is out on PFML and receives a check from this plan, how does the employer treat employee responsible deductions such as health insurance, uniforms, etc.?
Yeah, so it would have to be handled the same way that you currently handle leaves. So if it's a leave with pay, let's ignore that. But if it's a short-term disability claim, how do you handle those issues for short-term disability? If you do paid time off, how would you handle it under that situation? Whatever your company's written policies are, you have to work out. As for our check to your employee, the only thing we deduct for currently is for applicable federal and state income taxes. which we're taking off at a flat amount, providing a 1099. And if we over or under withheld from that benefit check, you can make it up on April 15th when you submit to the state and to the feds for your income tax process on the April 15th. We don't get involved in health premiums or other forms of withholding. That's not what I don't have the ability to administer, and I don't have the authority to administer that from the Act. The one thing that we're working on is, in addition to withholding for state and federal income tax, we're in the process of suggesting to the legislature that they also allow us to withhold, and it has to be done through the Act, through an act of the General Assembly, for child support. In which case, just like unemployment checks are reduced for child support, same process is going to be followed for paid family medical leave if that passes the legislature.
Thank you. If you're a new employer that starts in the middle of the year, do you begin contributing immediately? I think that if you are a new employee, I think that
Yeah,
that starts in the
yeah,
middle of the year.
but also for employers. If you're a new employer and on your first day you open your doors, you have 12 employees, and it's the middle of the year, you're part of the program from the day you open the doors.
Okay, good.
If you're a
Thank
new employee, you're on the you start getting payroll deductions on the first day that it's all your eligible wages.
Thank you.
Right.
And I think this next question may be part of the earlier variable hours and to your guidance. They ask, they may pay into this but then not be eligible.
Right. Unfortunately, that is going to end up happening. There is the ability to use waivers if it's a sort of a known thing that they will not be working those 12 months for you, or they will not be working those 1250 hours in a given year. But sometimes it's right on the edge there. And that is unfortunately the way the law, and that's the way FMLA was written, and we follow FMLA. So if you worked for an employer and who had 50 or more, you'd apply for FMLA and you wouldn't qualify either. The one other thing but on FMLA side, you never paid contributions, and it's an unpaid benefit. It's just a job protected benefit. So you'd feel the sting when it comes to paid family medical leave, but it's the same set of rules.
Okay. Can an employee double dip on paid time off in FMLA?
So that's up to the employer, and paid time off time counts towards your 6 weeks or your 12 weeks. So your time is reduced by paid time off that you take. However, there is the requirement at the beginning, just like FMLA, an employer, the law says an employer may require their employees to use most of their paid time off to work towards before accessing paid family medical leave benefits. Which means, it's up to you guys as employers whether or not you want to do this, whether or not you want to require that your employees have to use their paid time off. And if they're required to use their paid time off, then they can't be required to use more than 75% because the law says most. They can only use most of their paid time off. Didn't define what most is. We define it as 75%. So whatever is in their bank, they can only be forced to use 75% of what's in their bank as PTO. Why an employer would want to do that when the employer pays 100% of the wages while they're on paid time off, whereas they could pay 0 while we pay 80% up to $900 a week. The reason why they might is because then at the end of the approved leave, they only have 25% of their paid time off bank remaining. So they'll get their 6 weeks, but they'll only have a couple of days left in terms of sick time and vacation time. So again, it's up to the employer, and it's a decision that they make and apply it to all their employees. And
Thank you.
again, that's one of those things that you're going to report to us. And with the computer program, we're going to help you administer that properly.
Thank you. And this is our last question. And before I want to say thank you to all of you who have stayed on the call. I really hope that it's been helpful. And, I hope to connect with you again. We hope to connect with you following this with anything maybe that didn't come up. So remember, we're here to help. But our last question here is, can an employer choose for the checks to come to them directly and pay through their payroll process?
No, unfortunately, we're just set up, and the app specifically says that and there's no, also, this is paperless, it means checks as well. There's no physical checks. So when I say the word check, what I really mean is an ACH to a bank or a debit card that is provided by the Division of Paid Leave and funded from the benefit process. But it has to go to the employee, according to the act.
Awesome. That is the last question that we have.
All right.
That is awesome. I mean, great questions from all of our participants. It was very deep, very comprehensive. This was amazing. Chris, you're a trooper for sticking with this. To echo Stephanie, we have this up here. If you use the QR code, you can get to our website where this recording will we'll have a link to this recording in a day or two. Stephanie, is that about right?
Yeah, I would say if you guys don't mind, just give us about 48 hours to get that all squared away. And anyone that registered, didn't attend, as someone in your office, we're going to automatically send the webinar link and information out to the whole list of attendees and people who registered. So not to worry there either.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, we're here to answer questions and provide one-on-one consultations. Chris, thank you again. Weiner team, thank you again. And all the attendees, thank you. And thank you for managing us through this, Stephanie and Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Really appreciate not just this, but all your support and being patient and answering all our questions throughout this process.
That is literally what I'm here for.
Great.
Good
James.
enough, then we'll keep asking.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you.
Awesome.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.